This is your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lindsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. I wanted to take the time here on this beautiful day of love and Hallmark magic to say happy frickin' Valentine's Day. Every day in my life is Valentine's Day because my number one ingredient that I bake into my day is love. And as you know by now, my little VIPs, I love pretty hard. And I love even harder now since I started this show. You know, what does love mean to us? What does it mean to you? I know what it means to me, and it means unwavering anything, no matter what. If Lindsay loves you, Lindsay loves you. And love isn't always positive. It can be emotionally draining. Dear Lord, I'm exhausted half the time because I love so hard. And I not only love, but I do the tough love thing too. And I got this tough love from my dad because I was a recipient. It is tough to give tough love, like real tough, but it's so important that we do it. And love isn't perfect either, but neither are we. I am the first one to admit that I have not always handled life's challenges with grace. I may have said things that I've regretted. I may have hurt others without any intention to do so. Or, maybe in some cases I did. But I own it all. I don't live a life of dishonesty, egocentricity, or hatred. I live a life filled with unwavering love. And I have my moments, but overall, I try to operate my life from a place of love and forgiveness. And I wish that some people that are no longer in my life shared that same place with me. Perhaps they would still be around because life is too short. If there's anything that sitting in a wheelchair for half of my life, I'm sitting in it right now. If there's anything that I've learned with CRPS and my pain, life is absolutely too short. Hard stop. So as I've been reflecting on my life through doing this show, I am no angel. I have been hurt beyond anyone's capacity to handle hurt. And it's made me batshit crazy, like sometimes hurt, like Mad Hatter. And that ebbs and flows through this little Alice in Wonderland that is my life. And I've been hurt by some of the dearest people in my life that are no more. And some I've just chosen to let go of. And some have just been so hurtful to me that I might just name a city after one of them, like somethingville. But what I can say is I am grateful. I am grateful for my sweetie, my family, my friends, my clients, of course, my guests, and all that continue to support me in this life. And I have also learned that no one is going to be allowed in my life unless they feel the same way anymore. Be loving and forgiving. If you don't fall into both of those categories, peace out. So I set an intention for this episode to ask everyone who has hurt others, who has a mean heart, who cannot forgive others for being human, who needs to let go of whatever is making waves in other people's lives, to knock it off. And I can only speak for myself in that I have grown and changed so much in the past few years. And I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of my strength. I'm proud of the changes that I've made. And like I said, I'm not perfect. I don't want to be perfect either, even if I could be. But I am proud to be strong and vigilant. And I am proud to love hard. And I am proud to be a forgiving and loving woman. And I am sad that there are people in my circle by proxy that are unable to do those things and honor decisions that have been made in my life and that will continue to be made that are good for my life and for my sweetie and I's lives as well. With all that being said, I want to do a little love or show a little love to some of my favorite guests. And disclaimer, every guest has been insanely amazing. If you've been listening to the show, you'll have to agree with that statement. So this was a tough decision to pull a few of my faves out. And all of you, listeners and guests, have made such an incredible impact on my life. And I cannot begin to express my love and gratefulness for you coming into my life. I started this show to give pain purpose, to talk about how so much of our chronic pain issues in our lives circle back to trauma. And I have chosen to give my pain a purpose, to live a life with boundaries, not without, and to live life as a blessing, not a curse. Because what else is there to focus on but blessings? And on this amazing show of mine, I'm sorry, guys, I didn't know I was going to get all teary here, but I am. On this amazing show of mine, we talk about trauma, healing, people pleasing, anxiety, abuse, boundaries, chronic pain, among many others. So let's get into my Valentine's Day episode, my loves. I had the opportunity to talk with Brooke Braylove, who is a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and advanced acceleration resolution therapy practitioner, aka ART. We talk about what art is and how tremendous healing can be with this type of treatment. And what I love about art is the accelerated part of the sessions. She talks about making space for this alternative treatment for chronic pain, trauma, anxiety, depression, and complex PTSD. Listen to a portion of episode 11 with Brooke on the art of healing.
One thing about art that's so important is you don't have to stop doing anything that you're already doing.
Right.
So for someone who is on an antidepressant and that's going well for them, they don't have to stop their antidepressant to start art. They don't have to do homework in between sessions. They don't have to do a ton of research unless they choose to. I mean, I always want to work with someone who's very informed, but there's not a lot of work you have to do before. And you can continue if you're already in therapy. I always tell therapists, if you've got somebody who's stuck in a trauma, a phobia that just won't budge, again, chronic pain, that you have not found a way to work with it, send them to me for 1 to 5 sessions. I'll send them right back to you, or they'll continue with you, because this is not long term. You could make it, I guess, if you wanted to make it long term. If you kept finding things to work on, that would be reasonable, but it doesn't have to be. And again,
the whole point is that it's not.
That's the whole point. Accelerated, that word matters.
Yeah, it does matter. And as somebody that's type A and wants things done, blah, 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 I'm trapped in a body that never gets things done the way that I used to. And so that's why the accelerated part of it is like really great for me.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting is that when I tell people about it, the first thing they say is, that sounds too good to be true.
Sure, of course.
And Lainey Rosenzweig's new book is called Too Good to Be True. So we all get it. We get that this sounds very hard to believe. And I welcome skepticism. I don't take it personally. It makes sense that you're skeptical. You should be skeptical, but try to just remain a little bit open, and then I can work with you.
Right.
I want to sort of explain that there are 3 prerequisites to do art.
Oh, okay.
One is, that's important because that's our first screening tool. One is, can you hold a thought? 2 is, can you move your eyes back and forth? So may or may not work with someone who has seizures or major concussion, things like that.
Okay.
And so I always tell people, if you have any doubt, you check with your doctor, of course. And the third is, are you motivated to change? That one's a little bit trickier.
Sure,
okay?
Of course it is.
When you're working with chronic pain, chronic illness, or complex PTSD, people, of course, want to change. They are dying to change. They want desperately to feel better. But we also have to address occasionally is that secondary gain, that unconscious gain that they might have by staying stuck. Staying stuck is familiar. Staying in pain, staying in distress is familiar. And we gravitate toward what is familiar, not because it's good for us, but just because we know it.
We talk a lot on this show about modalities, right? To help us process trauma and chronic illness. And we have been talking a lot about the brain-pain connection. In episode 15, I spoke with Ben Ahrens. Ben is the CEO and co-founder of Reorigin, a company focused on neuroplasticity-based treatment and the incredible ability of the body to repair itself. His story started with being diagnosed with chronic neurological Lyme disease and what led him on his own healing journey in 2009. This episode focuses primarily on how our brain determines that our bodies are in fight or flight, how and why our bodies respond to our internal and external environments, and how powerful our brains are. Take a listen to a part of episode 16 with Ben on brain orchestration.
Ultimately, there are two important sides to this coin. It's not just what's coming at us from the environment that matters. It's how and why our body responds. And what is it that determines that response? Well, in the middle is the brain. The brain is like the mediator between our external and our internal environment. And we basically have two things. There's like in any system, there's inputs and there's outputs. And in the middle, there's the brain, which is like the mediator and the decision making. And based on a critical decision that the brain makes, and we're talking about a subconscious decision here, and basically that decision boils down to safe or unsafe, it will put out either performance-based outputs, which are like healing and adaptation, or survival-based outputs, which are adrenaline and cortisol and inflammation, norepinephrine, and things that send us into this defensive fight or flight mode where the body allocates all of its resources toward immediate survival because the brain has determined that it's in a state of threat.
Yeah.
So sometimes we want this. We want this fight or flight mechanism. It comes from a good place. It comes from any time when we're actually in danger. We want to be able to pull all of these resources from areas of like digestion and wound healing and procreation, because those are far secondary. They're not important when it comes to immediate survival. So we take the resources from those, or the energy from those areas, and we apply it toward fight or flight, toward immediate survival, toward pumping blood and oxygen to the limbs and producing inflammation and whatever we need in order to escape the danger. Now, this is all well and good if the danger is imminent and if it's real in that way. But more often than not, what we're learning is that what can happen is the brain essentially misclassifies or misidentifies certain things, including symptoms and sensations like pains in the body, as immediately or imminently life-threatening. And based on that interpretation that the brain has learned, it will then pour out these survival outputs, which are very energetically costly and draining to the system. And so it becomes this sort of self-perpetuating condition or self-fulfilling prophecy where now, we have symptoms that are being interpreted by this region of the brain called the insula or the limbic system. They're being interpreted as dangerous. And so the body says, symptoms, we're in danger, or pain, we're in danger. It puts out more inflammation to counteract the danger, which leads to more symptoms, which leads to more danger through, responses. And round we go until acted upon by an outside force.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I know this about my body. Every single word that just came out of your mouth, I'm like, you see me nodding, but nobody else sees me nodding. I'm like, I have a bear chasing me every single moment of my life. And I know that, like, I honestly know that. And I stopped doing doctors and medicines and pain this and pain that. I just went, I'm going baseline, baby. Like, I really want to know how my body actually feels without all of these other things that these doctors are trying to do, trying to have me take. I've made nutritional changes. I've done all of these wonderful things for my body. No drinking, no dairy, no gluten, no this, no that. Right. And so we're there. And now I'm sitting here going, I'm still in as much pain, if not more, because now the numbing that we were doing is now completely gone too. Right. So there's been things that have come up that have been really wonderful from a lot of my diet and nutrition changes. And, but I know wholeheartedly it is my brain. And so I know that a lot of people are faced with, okay, well, I want to get like a full body MRI, right? Like that's what I want to do right now in my brain. This is Lindsay talking. I want to know what the hell is going on everywhere. But then like what you mentioned, you're like, well, then you could find out a lot of stuff that you might not necessarily know that has nothing to do with anything. And it's just kind of fine. But I don't know the brain games. Like I play brain games. I've got apps to do things to exercise my brain and little things for my feet. I mean, it's just nuts, the things that I do. And now I'm listening to what you're talking about and then looking at your program, which I know you're going to get into. I believe wholeheartedly that our brain is where we have to start. We have to start there. One of the reasons that I know I am suffering from this unbelievable amount of chronic pain and trauma in my life is from some pretty painful things that happened to me starting at the age of 9. I basically have protected my parents, who are rock stars, by the way, throughout my whole life. And I've never shared any of the traumas that I went through when I was young, even up to this day. And like I always say, I tell my mom, like, if you listen to my show, you're going to have some questions. And as for my CRPS, it started when my ex-husband and I were trying to conceive. Did the fertility drugs do this to my body? I don't know. Did the abusive marriage I was in play a part in this? 100%. And thank God I didn't wind up conceiving. Nothing could be more painful to me than having to raise a child with that man. But I am an aunt to 6 little kiddos, and I want them to have an auntie who models the best love and care that I can. But as generations have ebbed and flowed, changed and morphed, and so on, those generational beliefs, attitudes, and approaches to rearing children don't make much sense anymore. You know, our culture is just a skosh different than it was in the 50s. And part of this culture shift, unfortunately, is a very sad topic in the uprising and suicide that we are seeing amongst children around the world. And as an aunt, that scares me, and it should certainly scare you as a parent. I'm not here to scare you guys, but it's a scary topic. Anyways, I think it's the responsibility of our culture to holistically eliminate unhealthy parenting relationships with children in our world, right? So I chat with my guest, who has now turned into one of the best besties on the planet, Angie Weber. Through her work and growing through her past emotions and trauma, she has created the Parent Toolbox of holistic health for her children, her family, and strangers alike. And she also has a podcast as well. It's called The Parent Toolbox, and she's just a badass. So listen to a part of our conversation from episode 16, Breaking Generational Cycles.
If you ask them now, they probably think all I did was yell. And
we talked about that, about how I've got a yeller in my crew that yells like nobody's business. And it's like, geez, Louise, it's so hard on everybody.
Absolutely. And it just really brought to light, because we both have amazing parents. I mean, my parents are supportive and they're loving and they are great in so many ways. And then going through this and really digging through some of the stuff in my childhood and in my adulthood, I saw how when it got brought up of things of emotions or mental health issues or traumas that had happened in our family, it was very much, let's turn a blind eye, let's sweep it under the rug, because our parents were uncomfortable about it. They didn't know how to talk to us about it. So now that got passed on to me.
Sure.
And me not wanting to talk about it and getting uncomfortable and wanting to shove it down. And so I'm just, on this huge mission to help educate parents. And for those who aren't parents, I mean, this information is so valuable for everyone to really start understanding.
Yeah, for sure. And to circle back, what I started with is as a culture, if we all started to adopt a little bit healthier way of processing our emotions and helping those around us. I've got a wide spectrum of nieces and nephews from 3 years old to 15, almost 16 years old. There's a lot of age differences in there. And I've seen every single one of them grow since they were born, and how different parenting techniques are with all 6 of them. Mm-hmm. And how I'm just like I said in the beginning, I would never do that. I would never do that. I would never do that. And some things are legit. I'm not a screamer. I'm not a yeller. I would never cuss at my kids. I would never cuss around my kids. Some of those, they're so toxic from the very beginning, and they're such sponges, if we can catch them, now, the more the merrier on that one, because it's just going to help, in my opinion, make our world a better, more loving and giving and healthy place to be.
Yeah. And, too, with the mental health stuff is I just actually interviewed someone on my podcast who is very passionate about eradicating children's suicide. As a parent, that's one of my biggest fears. That might be one of your biggest fears as an aunt too. And it's crazy how the amount of child suicides have risen over the last couple years and decade and whatnot. And if we can start at a younger age helping our kids with their own tools, hopefully that is going to eliminate a lot of that, because they're going to know how to handle it.
We all need tools to get through life in a happy and healthy way. I mean, what we pick up as kids from our environments and the people that are in our lives puts an imprint on us at such an early age. And some of what these imprints do is cause chronic suffering and pain. And as a person who has always been a people pleaser and has always put me last on the list, I identify with my guest, Amanda Kate, in this next conversation. I have been putting up boundaries with people in my life now that I've never done. And I'm working really hard to not be such a freaking people pleaser because it's exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. And Amanda is amazing beyond amazing. Well, all my guests are rock stars, but Amanda is a recovering people pleaser as well. She was an uber excessive critic of herself, and she straddles the divine and messy on the daily. She is a kinesiologist, life coach, speaker, and author who helps her clients' systems diffuse stress and help move out of dis-ease into a place of wellness holistically. She has a book called Divine Messy Human about prioritizing internal truth over external influence. Take a listen to her Aussie accent and a snip from our conversation from episode 17, Divine Messy Human.
The more I've stepped into my own power, the more a lot of people have sort of fallen away. And it's quite fascinating when you start looking at that, going from that really, really boundaryless people pleaser into somebody who has strong boundaries and who will not accept being treated certain ways. That's a massive jump for other people to get used to, because I'm putting in boundaries that I'm not willing to sacrifice because of my mental health, because of my physical health. I ended up with chronic fatigue in about 2013, and it was purely due to the chronic emotional, psychological, and other types of abuse that I'd been suffering day in, day out. And yes, a lot of that was my perception. A lot of that was what I was taking on because of the stories I'd created earlier. And it was just reinforcing that. And also because of that importance level I had on making everybody else happy, I was looking for, in that really weird subconscious way of how I was failing them. Because that idea of people pleasing automatically puts other people superior to yourself.
100% accurate statement.
Yeah. You put people up on this pedestal and you are aiming to be perfect for them, and you are never going to reach that height ever, because it's impossible. You can never make somebody else happy. You can never make somebody else, like you. And nobody ever got a chance to know the real me, because I was always showing them the person I thought they wanted me to be.
So not unlike Amanda and I's episode about people pleasing and boundaries in our relationships, another guest of mine, Shannon Petrovich, talk about the importance of relationships being real. Real relationships want to hear our truth, right? And, Shannon's been a therapist for over 35 years, focused on helping people heal from toxic or abusive relationships. Helping others clear their way after having been emotionally and or physically beaten down by another has been her life's work. She has a master's in social work and earned her clinical licenses in social work and substance abuse counseling, and is a board certified diplomat in clinical social work. Take a listen to a snip from episode 22, Out of the Fog, Into the Clear. That's also the name of her book that is a must read. Share yourself, your true self, in your relationships.
And I totally applaud you for doing that, because that's the kind of self-care that gives us the foundation to care for ourselves in relationships. So when we're caring for ourselves first, then we can care for ourselves in relationship. And then when others are offensive to us, we go, no, that doesn't work. No, that does not work for me. No. And that's when we learn to set real boundaries with people.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, it's really hard, especially when you're a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm pointing at myself and she's shaking her head at me. I am definitely a people pleaser. And it's like, great, I'm number 20 on the list of everybody that I've taken care of today. And then by the end, I have nothing left to give. And I'm just exhausted and resentful. And like, why am I resentful? I'm the damn person who did it. But it comes with it. It's that fog. It's like resentment, just like, ugh, I can't believe I did all of that for you. Well, I didn't even ask you to do it, Lindsay.
Right. And the people pleasing, placating, and peacekeeping, and the 3 Ps, those are how we undermine ourselves and how we don't tell the truth in our relationships. Because a lot of times we have kind of this martyr approach where we think we're doing everybody a favor by not telling the truth, by not having boundaries, by people pleasing. And the truth of it is that nobody actually likes that unless they're a narcissist person. Nobody
Well,
actually.
unfortunately, some of those people that I was doing are just so.
But a real relationship wants to hear your truth. They want to hear your thoughts, feelings, emotions, moods, ups, downs, whatever, dreams, aspirations. And so when you share all of yourself in a relationship, then you're giving that relationship the ability to grow into something meaningful. When you're people pleasing and placating all the time, you're actually not sharing anything of yourself. And you're giving that person permission to be all of the relationship and for you to not fully exist in that relationship. So you're setting up a dynamic right off the bat. So I really encourage people to not only notice everything in the early part of a relationship, but also notice yourself. If you're falling into peacekeeping and placating, make sure that you back the bus up.
Yeah.
And be absolutely be 100% honest right from the get-go with your thoughts, feelings, needs, wants, and take a breath, take a break, and let people know what you need and what you're about. And if that doesn't work, peace out,
Yeah.
game over.
Peace out. I love you.
don't
Peace
need
out.
like you don't need that in your life.
It's hard to set boundaries and love yourself enough to be real and true. And I find it challenging in not just my love relationships and friendships, but also with my clients. I'm such an emotional empath. And so is the next guest, Lauren Fonville. She is an integrative energy practitioner specializing in EFT. She believes we all have the answers within, and sometimes we just need a little help accessing them. Her fields of study do not just lie in EFT, aka tapping, but in trauma-informed yoga, Reiki, mindfulness and meditation, and sound healing. We talk about emotion, which really is energy in motion. And Lauren says that she's sensitive and being an empath is her superpower. And she is absolutely right. And I just love that. So let's get rid of the energy vampires that are in our lives, man. I'm done. No more suckers. And I need to remind myself of that actually, because I feel like my energy lately is getting sucked a bit more than it should. And I kind of need to start facing a little bit of that music again and practice what I'm preaching here. So take a listen to a part of episode 23 with Lauren, where we talk about tapping into emotional freedom and how we can move through life more gracefully, but we got to feel it to heal it. I've moved 18 times in 10 years, and it's not because of the military. So talk about stress and anxiety. What do they say? Like the top stressors are like death, divorce, and moving. Okay, all of the above, right? Just back to back to back. It's like no wonder I'm sitting in a wheelchair for part of my life and my pain is so high. And it's so interesting when we were talking about in our meet and greet about triggers, and you just brought it up again, and how we have to get so much better about identifying what those are.
Yeah, the awareness. The awareness is key. Recognizing when you're thinking about something, how that is making you feel in your body. And a lot of the time, we don't take the time to check in periodically throughout the day and be like, ask ourselves that question. How am I feeling? And if the answer is, I'm feeling great, amazing. Well, what are you thinking about right now? Right. And make that connection. And if the answer is like, I'm feeling sad or depressed, what is it that I'm thinking about? And the more that you begin to connect those things, the more clarity you can get. And when we recognize that our thoughts create our feelings, and then our feelings create our actions, and then our actions will then create our results. So it all starts with our thoughts and being mindful of what those thoughts are.
And that's hard to do, especially when we are bombarded with noise 24 hours a day. I mean, between Instagram to, all the email we get, especially during the holiday season, my God, just constantly bombarded with all of these things. And it distracts us from the stuff that's so much more important than, Victoria's Secret panty sales, which I got like 800,000 emails from Victoria's Secret. They don't even shop here anymore. So, and I believe wholeheartedly in that, because with my anxiety, because I used to have really bad debilitating anxiety. I'm much better than I was, but I need to get better at it. And one of the things that I started to do was just what you said. I was like, wow, all of a sudden I'm sweating. My chest is tight. What am I thinking about? And like 75% of the time, it was something really stupid. I'm like, why am I anxious about that? Like, what?
Right. Where we
So-
spend our energy, right? It's like being mindful of how we are spending our energy. And a lot of that has to do with emotions. And the definition of emotion is energy in motion. This idea that our emotions need to be felt. They want to be felt. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge, because a lot of the time when we're talking about emotions that are uncomfortable, like sadness, frustration, anger, we tend to push that stuff down and we distract ourselves with something else so that we don't have to feel those uncomfortable emotions, right? And that can work in the short term, right? Maybe you throw yourself into your work, or you throw yourself onto your couch and you're eating too much or drinking too much, whatever it is, to not feel those things. But when we take the time to really acknowledge how we're feeling, then that emotion can begin to move through us. And it doesn't continually feel like we're running from the emotion, but we're moving through it and we're moving forward, and we can make progress in that way. You got to feel it to heal it, baby.
Feel it to heal it. You got it. What's the other one that I like to use? It's the only way out is through.
Yes.
And it's true. The only way out is through is one of my favorite lines of all time. And I feel like I should add it to like one of my tattoos, quite frankly. And as we talk about trauma and healing on every episode of this show, we also talk about negligence in our healthcare system. Doctors and practitioners not necessarily caring for their patients the way that they should, putting fucking devices in our bodies that are unnecessary and are causing people more and more pain than when they started. So for this last one here, before I leave you to go smooch up on your sweeties, I have a phenomenal man, Adam Slater, whom I interviewed from a documentary on Netflix from 2018 called The Bleeding Edge. Adam is a nationally and internationally acclaimed certified civil trial lawyer and a partner in the New Jersey trial law firm, Mazie Slater, Katz and Freeman. He has over 25 years of experience representing the victims of negligence and wrongful conduct. This documentary is insane about our medical device industry, the FDA, litigation, and the stress that litigation puts on the chronic pain patient, furthering their conditions caused by these devices and those that market them. And you must listen to our full episode and watch this documentary as well, and you will get angry. So take a listen to 2 parts of episode 25, The Hypocrisy of Doctors and Devices.
Something that was really compelling that I took, as I always do, I take all my cases, I take all the evidence right out of their documents. There was this great PowerPoint from one of these companies, and the PowerPoint had a big picture of rebar. Anybody who knows what rebar is, if you see a building being built or a sidewalk being built, it's where you have these steel piping basically, and then the concrete gets dropped in, and that helps to support the concrete. So this company was telling their sales reps, tell the doctors that this mesh is like rebar, and then the body is going to cement it into place, and it's going to be this great lasting repair. Well, I have taken that in my trials, and we showed this to the jury, and my experts who are experienced in removing this stuff have testified and explained, well, yeah, it is like rebar. It's a great analogy because it does cement itself in, but then you think about it and say, all right, well, they were marketing as this great rebar. And again, maybe this is the stupidity of a lot of doctors, the lack of thought process by a lot of doctors who don't take the next step and think things through. Because if you have rebar and there's a pipe under there, a water main or something, you know, I live in New Jersey. You go down the sidewalk here, you see people blasting away with jackhammers, whatever. They got to get to it. They blast away that concrete. They blast away the rebar. They get to where they have to go. And Con Ed or PSE&G, whoever fixes the wires, then they put new rebar down and they jump more concrete. Well, imagine what happens to the human body when you have to basically jackhammer down. And that's what they have to do. I've read operative reports where it's cemented to the pubic bone. It's so hard that they have to use complex electrocautery devices to burn away tissue. They're cutting in because this isn't a sidewalk. This is a woman's body. So the damage that's left, often a woman could be left even worse off than she was before. But man, there's a great decision I have to make. You're a woman who at 45 years old had some leaking urine that would bother you once in a while. And so you'd have to wear pads or something. And now a doctor says, we got this great mesh thing and it's going to save you and you're never going to leak again. And then they put that in there. And now they have all this pain and they can't have sex anymore because it hurts too much. And they've got eroding mesh and they have all this scarring. So the doctor says, well, you can live with the pain for the rest of your life, or we can do surgery to remove it. But one of the risks is you're going to be even worse off. That's the choice that the women have. And so many have opted for the removal of the mesh. And in some cases, the mesh gets out and the patient feels a little better. But in a lot of these cases, because of the nerve damage and the cutting and all the scarring that gets accumulated, now you're worse, but you had a catch-22. It's a terrible decision to make. And there's women making that decision every single day. There's women making that decision today. And again, this translates to other contexts, but it's really been maddening in the pelvic mesh area because they would pretend that this was so safe and the warnings were completely inadequate. And it's devastating for so many women to have to deal with that choice and to have a life of pain.
I mean, after you listen to this, if you're not losing your mind, I don't know what to say. Ugh, this industry, this medical device industry, stop pushing procedures on it. Knock it off. Stop it.
One of the things I also saw is I'm a guy. Men have issues once in a while. Nobody's saying, well, we will do this procedure on you, we'll do that procedure on you. It's all right. Well, you know what? Do this or do that. Lifestyle, take care of yourself, eat better, whatever. What I started to learn when I looked at women's gynecologic medical records is the surgical and medical histories, all the procedures that get pushed on them.
Yeah.
On you. On women. And, the doctors are oblivious, but this is what they're thinking. It's almost like a woman's body is something to be operated on, to be experimented on, to be a source of money, because every procedure generates money. And I think until the medical profession takes a step back and acknowledges where this has gone, I don't know if the problem's going to really end.
Are you angry yet? Good. Be angry. We need to use our voices to help for the better good for our bodies and for the bodies of the people that we love. So, what's coming up on the next couple episodes? So we've got healing resentment, more about our brains and the power behind them, addiction and sexual abuse, plant medicine and ayahuasca retreats, bullying and suicide, more hypocrisy in the healthcare industry, cancer, and more. So I am leaving here on this Love Day with one more word: hope, hope, hope. Although we have been through so much shit in life, we got to keep on trucking. Keep going. Keep smiling. And remember that love rules. I know, gag, Lindsay. But it does, because the alternative blows. So with that, I just wanted to say I love you, my sweetie, and happy Valentine's Day to all of you. You are exclusively invited to share this lovey-dovey Valentine's Day VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Please follow the Pain Game podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. And don't forget to give the show a review too on Apple Podcasts and spread the love through sharing these incredible stories with incredible people. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.